Right, welcome, and this is the Sunday results show for the new Premier League season. And yes, you are actually seeing me on camera. Previously, any of you who followed me, you've just had my voice and lots of pictures. I'm actually going to throw my ugly mug in this season, not all the time though, that would be unbearable for you. But I'm going to do some of the show in camera, and you will also have the opportunity when I put the pictures up to have a rest from my ugly mug. So this is a little bit of an experiment. It's going to be more ad-lib, it's going to be more on the fly. I'll probably make a few more errors, so bear with me, but I think it might be received more favourably. So let's get started with the first match on the first Sunday of the season, and it was at the Hawthorns, a newly promoted West Brom, at home to Leicester. Leicester finishing rather poorly last season after blowing a Champions League spot. They ended up in 5th in the Europa League, and a lot of expectation maybe for Leicester fans and for us as to how they would react. Could they push on and restore that quality, or were they going to fall into the pack with the rest of maybes? And so we got started anyway. Empty stadiums, of course, because of COVID. It has to be said, I missed the start, but if it was anything like the rest of the first half, it really wasn't that watchable. Albion were containing Leicester. Leicester looked a bit sluggish. There were very few opportunities at either end. A late chance for the left winger, Barnes, just before the half, and one snapshot from Vardy. I can't recall a West Brom effort. A Costa free kick from distance, but it was hit the wall and went clear. And so, to be honest, Johnson and Schmeichel could have been in the stands really, but we went to the break goalless. Second half was a different story. Leicester put the foot down a little bit, and they started to show their superior class, and the Albion defence just couldn't cope with it. Firstly, they managed to get a nudge on Vardy in the penalty area. He stepped up and slotted it into the corner as cool as a cucumber. That was 1-0 to Leicester. And I'm just trying to check what time that was. It was possibly in around about 50 minute now. And then there was a second for the new signing, Castagna, who's now in at right back. Of course, they've lost Chilwell, and he looked a good signing. And he stepped up from a corner and headed home decisively for 2-0. And then a little bit later, onto the 86th minute, I'm looking down at a board I've got here, so apologies for that. There was another infringement in the box, a really clumsy challenge on Justin, and Vardy stepped up again, and the same place, same result, 3-0. And it ended up a really easy victory for the Foxes. In interview, Rodgers, of course, was extremely delighted. A strong performance. He also put Maddison in for the last few minutes. Maddison, of course, has had a long-term injury problem. And, of course, he didn't have Evans suspended. But they still handle it very well. And the Didi was in the back four for the Foxes. Bilic lauded the first half performance, but basically was pragmatic enough to say that we've got to be tight for the full 90 minutes. My question is, who's going to score their goals? Because there didn't seem to be anyone up for it. So, final score then at the Hawthorns, West Bromwich Albion 0, Leicester City 3. So to the second match then on this Sunday, the first Sunday of the new football season, the new Premier League season, and it was at the White Hart Lane Stadium. Spurs at home to Everton. In the transfer window, Spurs have managed to get Doherty, very influential right back from Wolves. That quite surprised me, but couldn't see anybody else there. Dele Alli was back in. He missed a few games, and up front Son and Kane. And for Everton, though, they were introducing their brand new signing from Real Madrid, Jamil Rodriguez. Jamie, I'm not quite sure of the pronunciation. It reads James, but we don't call him James. And he was in from the start, and Calvert-Lewin and Richarlison up front. No Sigurdsson, maybe international duty put him on the bench. But anyway, things got started, and it was a fairly swift-paced game. Everton certainly having the better of the early exchanges, and they managed to create an opportunity following a pretty poor error by Spurs, and Richarlison got away one-on-one with Lloris. He rounded the keeper, but the angle was just a bit too tight, and he spooned it over the bar. But that was a warning for Spurs. They did react, though. There was a couple of nice runs from Song. One nice little through pass that was inches away from connecting with Harry Kane. And they also had a snapshot which brought Pickford into action. And Pickford later saved, just before the break, from Doherty. That was a sharp stop with his legs. And to be perfectly frank, Spurs were a little bit unlucky to be behind. Into the second half, though, and they didn't really put their foot on the gas. And finally, on 54 minutes, Dania, a corner, found Calvert-Lewin, and his rocket header hit the back of the net before Lloris could blink. And so Everton had taken the lead, and basically they hung on to the lead, and that's how it finished. A disappointed Mourinho. He sort of muttered a little bit about lack of preparation, but, you know, they've all been guilty of that. Ancelotti was in good spirits, and so he should do. This could be a good season for Everton. So final score at White Hart Lane, Spurs 0, Everton 1. So it's Monday night action, Premier League, opening game of the season, Bramall Lane, and Wolves were in town. And Wolves, of course, very impressive last season. Very unlucky, I think, to miss out on the Europa League. Sheffield United, well, they performed way beyond anybody's expectations. So it looked like a good game on paper. Empty stadium as usual. Team news. Nino Espirito Santo had the luxury of putting Jota and Neves on the bench, and he installed his new signing, Marcel. No Johnny, he's injured. Otherwise, of course, they've lost Doherty to Spurs. For Sheffield United, looked much the same as they put out most of last season, just that rotation up front, and Wilder selected Sharp and McBurney. But they were only watching as Wolves got off to a tremendous start. Just 2 minutes on the clock when Neto broke on the left, and he found Jimenez in the penalty box, and Jimenez performed a delightful, composed pass finish, which found the back of the net. It was absolutely exquisite, and so they were 1-up. A few minutes later, the same player, Jimenez, could have added to, but Ramsdale saved. Now Ramsdale's been bought from Bournemouth because Henderson has gone back to Man U. he's obviously confident that he can nudge out De Gea, and I think he probably can, but we'll wait and see on that. So Ramsdale making the save, but he couldn't do much about the corner that followed. Again, a delightful cross, and Saiss with a really strong header. You could see the neck muscles sprouting as he headed wide of Ramsdale. And so that was Wolves 2 up in 6 minutes. Wolves on fire. Sheffield United steadied the ship with it. Fabrizio had to be smart to foil a McBurney cross on 17 minutes. But at the break it was 2-0 to Wolves. Into the second half, Fleck was unlucky. He hit a post on 50 minutes and it bounced to Baldock, whose shot was inches wide. But that was about the best for Sheffield United. Saiss had a chance of making it 3 on 69. Egan did head wide on 87, and another header wide by McBurney on 92. Not a bad performance by Sheffield United, but let's be honest, Wolves look cracking. And Neves came on. Traore had some good runs, and that Jimenez, he is a class act, and steady at the back. I expect Wolves to be pushing for Champions League this season, and on this performance I could be right. Final score at Bramall Lane: Sheffield United 0, Wolverhampton Wanderers 2. So the second game on Monday night was at the Amex. Brighton entertaining Chelsea. Some new signings to mull over. Lallana has come from Liverpool and was selected for Brighton. Lallana's had a dreadful time with injuries. He's hoping to relaunch his career here at Brighton, and I'm sure Graham Potter is hoping so as well. Talented player, but we haven't seen much of him for at least 2 years. For Chelsea, they've got their money out. They let Willian go, but they've signed Werner, who came from the Bundesliga. I think he came from Leipzig, and Havertz, who's come from the Italian Serie A, very highly regarded, and they were both in the starting lineup. Rudiger was on the bench, Zuma retaining his place. Mount, of course, installed. Abraham sitting out next to Giroud now. I wonder what's going to happen with them. And I couldn't see Pulisic either, or the other Serbian. But off we went, and it didn't take long for the new boy Werner to show what he was made of. Rather speculative through ball, but he latched onto it like a whippet, and he managed to get to it before Ryan, and clipped it wide of Ryan, and Ryan took the striker out. Clear penalty. Jorginho stepped up with his famous stutter, and it was 1-0 for Chelsea. Ryan lucky that he didn't get a red. And then another shot from Werner, but this time the keeper was managed to keep hold of it. That was the score at the interval, 1-0 to Chelsea. But Brighton had come into it, March looking lively, and into the second half, his cross was met by Campbell, and it was only inches wide. 53 minutes, though, they got one better. Trossard hit a beautifully curved shot from outside the box after a relatively poor clearance from across. Looked like some question marks about Kepa in the Chelsea goal, but it levelled things up. But 2 minutes later, an enormous effort from Reece James, playing sort of wing back. He hit the ball from beyond 30 yards on 53, and it whistled into the top corner, and so they were back in front, Chelsea 2-1. It was slightly fortunate, but nevertheless they were there. And then Dunk had a great opportunity to equalise. That was on 58 minutes. But unfortunately, his header went wide of the post. and they paid for it because on 66, another dead ball situation, another corner. Zuma got to it and managed to hook the ball goalwards. It was deflected, but it mattered little because it hit the net, and Chelsea had got their third. Well, after that, it was relatively all over. Brighton had lost a little bit of will, and so a good start for Frank Lampard with his new signings. He was delighted. I think they're going to sort out that keeper. He's not up to the mark, Kepa. But full time at the Amex, Brighton won. Oh yeah, and Lallana got taken off at half time or around half time. I'm not quite sure what his injury is, but my goodness me, talk about having a bad luck. But anyway, the final score at the Amex was Brighton 1, Chelsea 3.